The truth of the matter is that for many people who are going through intense levels of spiritual warfare, like dealing with gang stalking, dealing with situations where there is a witch, a warlock, a sorcerer in some way that continues to send spell work to a person, that continues to spiritually persecute a person, the truth of the matter is that you most likely know that person from a previous lifetime. And so this is where we're getting into the conversation of having a witch wound. For people who are unfamiliar with the concept of a witch wound is essentially a situation where in a past life, you were someone who had spiritual powers. You were a healer, you were a shaman, you were a psychic, you were clairvoyant, whatever your spiritual gift was. When we have a witch wound, it is a sign that in a previous lifetime, we were targeted either by other witches or by people who did not have certain levels of spiritual power and were intimidated by the spiritual power that we had and held. And so when we have a witch wound, it means that in a previous lifetime, we were either exiled for having spiritual gifts or we were spiritually targeted and persecuted for having spiritual gifts, and or we experienced curses in those previous lifetimes from sorcerers, from entities, from warlocks, and those curses are continuing to play out in a karmic loop for us in this current lifetime. Hello, beautiful people. It is Oshun Kimmy, your sage, your guru, your mystic, and your spiritual informant. And for today's video, I would like to talk a little bit about how the truth of the matter is that when we are dealing with intense levels of spiritual warfare, we have known our cursor in a previous lifetime as well. When it first came to my awareness that I was being cursed by my own spiritual godparent, one of the things that was very clear to me was that this was not the first time this had happened between us. There was an understanding within me that this had happened in a previous lifetime before. And so the depths that they were willing to go, the lengths that they were willing to go to continually curse me, harm me spiritually and psychically, that let me know that there was previous encounters in our records, in our Akashic records. It was clear that this was not the first or the only time that this had happened between us. So when you are in a situation where you have been dealing with a particular witch, sorcerer, or demonic entity for various lifetimes, then that is how we know that there is a soul level lesson present for us in this encounter. There is something unresolved for us on a soul level that is causing a continuation of this situation. There is something that has not been healed, something that has not been cleared, something that has not been harmonized or alchemized that is continuing to play out in our incarnations. So when we are dealing with intense levels of spell work, the question that we should always be asking is, what is the lesson we are intended to learn in this particular situation, so that in our next incarnation, so that when we are done with this incarnation, we are not facing the same entities, warlocks, sorcerers again in our next lifetime. And so as hard as it is to deal with this type of spiritual persecution in this lifetime, we should also see it and understand it as an opportunity to heal and resolve something so that we can break this karmic loop that is keeping our soul sort of chained to a particular set of experiences and chained to a particular set of sorcerers, witches, or entities. So let's talk about a few steps that I would suggest taking if you have noticed that you are dealing with a situation where you knew your sorcerer, your witch, your warlock, or your demonic entity in a previous lifetime, or these sorcerers or entities have been affecting your bloodline for various lifetimes. So these curses can be both related to past life things and to ancestral things. And so the first step I recommend taking is opening a petition with the universe to figure out more about your particular situation. So the process of opening a petition essentially involves you going before the universe, going before your spiritual council in some way, and seeking and praying for discernment or guidance to understand what exactly is happening, how long it has been going on, what the contract is, and what the terms of breaking it is for you. And so this process of opening a petition with the universe, I've talked about in previous videos before, so I won't go too into depth with it here, but it's essentially a process of talking out loud to the universe for up to 21 days, essentially to call attention to your specific situation and to call in spiritual guidance, assistance, and support for your particular situation. And the thing with opening a petition with the universe is that as you begin to receive those answers, we have to ready ourselves for what we learn, because we may very well learn that we have a lifetime contract with a particular entity or with a particular sorcerer or warlock that we have to work through in this lifetime. And so we have to be aware that when we open that case, we got to be open and ready for the answers and insight that our spiritual court brings us. Thing number 2 that I recommend after opening this petition with the universe is that as you begin to receive answers about your particular situation, this is the time to begin your shadow work process. You have to know your demons, your weaknesses, your shortcomings better than anyone else, because when it comes to this level of warfare, witches, warlocks, and demonic entities want to use our weaknesses against us. So we have to know what our weaknesses are. And then the point of shadow work is not just saying, these are my weaknesses. The point is to work on those weaknesses. If we know that we have particular vices, we have particular self-sabotaging behaviors or self-destructive patterns, then that is essentially our sign to work on those things so that we can free ourselves from the habits, behaviors, and mindsets that are keeping us chained to karmic contracts and to karmic loops and people. And the third thing that I'm going to recommend when it comes to breaking karmic contracts and cycles that you may have with witches, sorcerers, demonic entities in your life is to initiate a process that many therapists call opposite action. So this process is what's going to help us quantum leap, essentially to leap out of old timelines into new timelines. If you've ever seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's a similar concept to where if you want to change a timeline, you have to do something that is very new or unfamiliar to you in some way. And if you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend watching it to get a better understanding about parallel universes and parallel timelines that exist and the ways that we actually have access through this idea of quantum entanglement. We essentially have access to various timelines and parallel versions of ourselves that exist. There really is no past, present, future. Everything is happening all at the same time. So we have access to both the worst of our beings and our lower timelines, but we also have access to our higher timelines and the best manifestations of our beings. And so the third step involves doing things that aligns you to higher timelines. And so the main way to do this is to change the behaviors that you take up on a daily basis. So if you know that you eat a certain way, changing the way you eat will essentially open you to new timelines. If you know that you have a certain bad habit that needs to be shifting that bad habit is going to take you into new timelines. So essentially the idea is to do the opposite of things that you have been doing, because if you have heard that quote that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over but expecting a different outcome. If we know that what we would desire is a whole new reality, we have to do things that are unfamiliar to us or that are new to us to bring us into a new desirable state of reality. If people are interested, I will talk more about quantum leaping, talk more about how to access new parallel timelines and how to access previous lifetimes that we have lived, if that is something that people are interested in, because the gifts that we have and also the curses that we have carry over from lifetime to lifetime. So the more that we are able to tap into these lifetimes and do the healing work necessary on a quantum level to bring peace to certain traumatic experiences that are unresolved, then we are better able to manifest the desired reality that we want to live in this lifetime and shift certain soul contracts that we may be aligned with for our next incarnations. I really hope this video made sense and that it brought some clarity to some people, because the main thing that I wanted to make clear is that we essentially have contracts with the people, witches, warlocks, sorcerers, entities, and karmic situations that we are involved in. And so, a major, major part of our lifetime, the reason why we incarnate into these challenging situations is so that we can bring healing to the situation and essentially be able to manifest better lifetimes, better existences. If you need a reading about past life gifts and curses, please feel free to book a reading with me on the Etsy. I did just add a past life reading and reincarnation reading onto the Etsy. And so if you have questions about your previous incarnations, then I would highly suggest booking that reading. Of course, if you would like to go deeper into the mystery of magic and learn how to work your own magic, your own spiritual power, then that is where I would invite you to join us on the Patreon. May peace and blessings be forever upon every viewer of this video. Ashe.